Today is March the 28th, 2014. My name is Tanya Finchum along with Alex Bishop. We're with Oklahoma State University, and today we're in Shawnee, Oklahoma to speak with Jimmy Ray. And this is regarding our 100-year life project, so thank you very much for having us today. Let's start with having you tell us when and where you were born.
I was born in Shawnee, which is not very many around here now that are born in Shawnee unless they're young. The older ones moved away or died. But I was born in October the 19th, 1913, and my birth certificate says I was so many miles and one way and a few miles the other way from Shawnee, but now it would be in Shawnee, right? Well, I think it's across the road from the Shawnee Country Club, right now.
So born at home?
Born at home with the doctor and a midwife. The midwife was Mrs. Mudd. I don't know whether Mrs. or Miss, but at that time. But she was a customer of mine later on when I was running a lumberyard there on Highland.
Oh, what did your parents do for a living?
What?
What did your parents do for a living?
Well, my mother worked as a home beauty operator. She learned to marcel hair back in the 20s, right after the bobs come in, and she just had a small shop. She'd cut hair and do marcelling, and Dad at that time we'd been farming, but we got flooded out by the river and moved to Ponca City, and that's where she started her business. And Dad started as a concrete worker and worked up to be a finisher.
And so where did you go to elementary school then?
I started here in Shawnee. Okay. I went to Busson School when it was a one-room school with a big heater in the middle of the school and wood pile and all that. And we went from the first grade to the 8th grade. So you got a well-rounded education no matter what grade you were in. But I only went 2 years there. And that was not really in my district. I was across the river. I had to go across the river and about 2 miles to school. And the reason that I did that mostly, I think, was because I had 2 cousins that were going to the same school that lived just across the river from our place, and we were very close. We went back and forth all the time we were growing up until I moved.
What river? What?
North Canadian.
North Canadian, okay.
But it was, used to be 5 miles east and 2 miles north of Shawnee. Mm-hmm. That would be from where the old country club used to be. And then I had to start school at North Canadian School, which was about the same distance away. And after the flood of 23, when it just left about 3 foot of the comb of our house sticking out of the water. It'd been tied with oil field cable to a elm tree or two. They would just bob it up and down. Of course, it wasn't a big house anyway. But my mother refused to move back. So we moved up on a little further north to a house that was just about a mile north of where we were living. And it was friends of ours that he was never going to move to town. And I don't know what he did for a while, but she put in a beauty shop. That's where my mother learned from her. And anyway, then we farmed only about another year after the flood. And then we moved to Ponca City.
What did you farm?
Just cotton and corn. And
Did you have to pick?
I had to pick cotton, and that's not my thing. Just not a good. After this is kind of getting ahead, but we never did make any money. I didn't know that, but I found out we were just poor people. And when the Depression come along, and Dad's work just went out like that, just about, because he was a small contractor, concrete contractor at that time. Mm-hmm. And Mother wasn't getting very much. So they just quit. And this little 9-acre place that we had on the river was paid for. So Dad tore down the old house and moved up on the south end of it, which was supposedly higher. It was because the water went downhill. You don't want to run down that way. But when the water get up, it said that just the same as it did on the other one. But we didn't know that for sure at that time. But anyway, built a little 3-room house, and we moved back to the farm to restore prosperity. Didn't do it. But I had, in the meantime, we'd moved from Ponca City to Cushing and various places. Moved back to Shawnee to, like I say, to make 2 chickens in every pot and all that with Hoover. But it was hard to start out on the farm for me, because I'd been used to being in town and having friends all around, and some of them had cars that they could use, and I'd go with them. And with church group and all, I really enjoyed being at the age I was. It was a junior high and all that. And I moved to Shawnee, back to Shawnee, right at the depth of the Depression, you might say. didn't have a car. Well, we had an old Essex, but I didn't drive it because usually it was flat and out of gas. But I hitchhiked to school and took my last year at Shawnee. I knew a few kids from previous schooling, and my cousins were still here, but they had changed quite a bit. Still went with him some. Had a boy and a girl, and the girl had been married and was in other places, but boy was still at home. He had 3 ages. He had one for his birthday and one for the company that he worked for, the Shell Pipeline Company, because they didn't take people as young as he was at that time. But he just upped his age a little bit. And then, anyway, in going to school, I'd walk the 2 miles south to the highway 270 and then hitchhike the rest of the way. And usually had pretty good luck. That was before all this killing and stuff happened. And then I didn't like to carry a lunch because I had to carry books, papers, stuff, and it just slowed you down on getting the ride. And I didn't like to take a lunch either. So there was several of us would sit in the auditorium and during lunch hour. That they didn't have feed the kids deal or anything like that. If you didn't have the money, you didn't eat. Didn't take much money. And occasionally I'd get a dime, and you could eat on a dime. It's unbelievable. But you could get a hamburger and a pretty good meal for a dime, it seemed to me like. And I made it through. But I never did get really acquainted too much with the people because they were all in the same shape I was. I just didn't know it. And made not the best grades, but I made fair grades. And then I graduated. I didn't have any clothes to wear, but they give me a robe, and a hat. And I said, I'd just as soon you'd hand me that and I could go on home, but no, I'd had to go through the process. And then I just waited 4 years after I got out of high school before I could get a job, other than picking cotton. And I started to tell about that a while ago. I picked cotton beside a 12-year-old boy, and we'd pick alongside one another. I'd pick 2 rows, he'd pick 2 rows. And he'd get 150 to 200 pounds, and if I could get 100 pounds, I was doing good. And it didn't pay very much. That'd be 100 pounds of cotton, I think, was 25 cents. I'm not sure. That's how much I got out of the picking. I worked 2 weeks and made, seemed like $18, but I'm not sure. I think that was about right. Anyway, I went to town and bought a suit of clothes because the flood and first one thing and another had, when I graduated, I got this diploma and I nailed it up on the wall about where a nail would be. It's about 5 foot or something like that. And the water got 5 foot and 8 inches in the house. But near ruined that diploma.
So you said it took you 4 years to get a job.
4 years to get a job.
Well, what was that job? Well, your first job?
It was working at a lumber yard, working at the yard that I eventually run. I worked up from well, they hired me as a bookkeeper, but that wasn't my thing either. And so they got another guy to do the bookkeeping, and that's kind of a come down, from a bookkeeper to yard man or first one thing or another. But anyway, it was more enjoyable. I liked it better. And I didn't know I liked it better, but I did.
What year was that you started with the lumber company?
Let's see, I started in 1936.
36.
And
Okay.
the first load that I took was to Van's Lumberyard, or Van's Pig Stand in Shawnee, which is a kind of a landmark now.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's a barbecue.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but
So you would have graduated from high school in 1932.
1932.
Okay.
It was,
That's the tail end of the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
and I started to work. I think my uncle got me the job kind of because he was a bricklayer, first one thing another, and worked out of that lumber yard. So the manager was kind of talking about needing some help, and he knew I needed a job, and he told him about it. And they just went out to the house and asked me if I wanted to go to work, and I said, I sure do. And I changed clothes, I think. I had one good pair of overalls left. And I went to work that day. But the manager could see that I was kind of small, and he wasn't sure whether he was going to hire me or not, but he was going to try me out. He said, give you $5 a week to start with, and if you pass, well, then I'll give you a raise. And so I started for $5 a week. That was a little below the minimum wage now.
Well, how would you get there?
Well, I stayed with my uncle
Okay.
in town, and he told me that I could stay there. So it didn't cost me anything for the first 2 or 3 weeks for room and board. And as I got more money, I eventually paid him, I think, $3.50 a week for my room and board, something like that. Which they were happy that I did that.
And what was the name of the lumber company you started with?
It was Sprague Lumber Company. It was a line yard. Their headquarters were in Muskogee, and then they had a yard at Haskell. You had to have 3 yards to be a line yard.
And how long were you with the company?
Until, I quit them in 50. I quit before too, and during the war, and went to Tinkerfield, or I went to Norman first. Harmon, Cowan, Norton, Tankersley was building a naval base there at Norman, and I worked there for about 2 months or 3 or 4. I don't remember now exactly, but I'd already put my application in at Tinker, and so they called me during that time, and I went to there. And it was real interesting work. I worked in the woodmill at Tinker and did a lot of detach service to Aldous and Salina, Kansas, and St. Louis, Missouri, and another one, Fort in Nebraska, but I can't think of the name of it right now. It was just a small place.
Did you room and board there too? At Tinker?
They give you $6 a day per diem or whatever. And that, in addition to the other, made a pretty good check. And we were needing it with the 2 kids and all that.
Well, then let's back up. When did you get married?
1937.
37. Okay. So she went to Tinker with you.
No, she stayed home with the kids.
Okay.
And I don't think she worked any at that time, though.
And the children were born, you said were twins. And when were they born?
The what?
When were they born?
In 40.
Okay.
1940. Just had a very good time for deferments, you know, because they were drawing numbers out of the hat, fishbowl or whatever it was that they put them in. And I didn't go to service. I did try to one time, but it didn't work out.
Well, how had you met your wife?
Well, it was kind of a blind date. Fella, our milkman, was about my age. And we'd run around together a little bit, but anyway, he said that he had a date for me, and I went with her. And I'd been going with another girl, but kind of dropped out. She had married somebody else. I did too.
How long were you married?
62 years.
62 years.
She died. Then I got married again.
Oh my gosh.
that wasn't too good really, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't what I expected. She had more money and had a nice house and all. I thought, well, that'd be better. So I sold my house, moved in with her. It was still her house. And I thought we'd go places. She got in worse health, and so we didn't go anyplace much, unless it was a family reunion or something, and not my family, it was her family, which is all right. I got acquainted with some of them. They're all good people, but it just didn't turn out quite like I thought it would. But she died too.
You didn't divorce?
No divorce.
No divorce.
And your children, how many children did you said you had 2 children?
Oh, yeah, that wasn't any children the next time because I was,
No, but with your first wife, you had 2 children.
yeah, that's all.
And boy, girl, or?
Boy and a girl.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit about, they were twins, right? So what was that like when you learned your wife was having twins?
Well, it wasn't bad to know that she was having them. I was kind of, friends of ours that had twins that lived not too far from us. And so I didn't worry about that too much. But after they got there, it was a new experience for both, well, especially for me. Now, she had sisters, a small, when we were married, it was about 2 years old, I guess, sister that she had. Then there was some brothers and all, so she was in a family where she had taken care of siblings, but I didn't have any idea how much work it would be. But
and you were an only child, is that?
yeah, and that was during the war when I had to get up early and catch my ride and go, and you get home at night, and we had to take turns because I would be gone 12 hours a day to and from and all, and she'd be there to take care of them all by herself. I think her mother came up though and stayed some, which wasn't good either. But anyway, we made it. I know I changed 18 diapers in 30 minutes one time. Seemed to me like it was 30 minutes, maybe. I know I changed 18 diapers anyway, between the two of them. And I couldn't wait. I didn't know. It was, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, sleepy and tired, wanted to go to bed.
Well, I'm surprised you changed diapers. Most men wouldn't touch them.
Well, that's what I say. You had to, because she'd already changed them all day.
And that's when they were cloth diapers.
That was when they were cloth. That didn't count the washing and drying. And going back to the lumberyard, when I started, I was working for about $9 or $10 a week, something like that. When we got married, I believe I was making $12 a week. Or anyway, I didn't get a raise for a long time. But I thought jobs were still pretty scarce. You didn't just go across the street and get another job. You had to know about it and look for it and all that. So I thought, well, if I go in debt, build a house, why, I'll owe the company and they'll keep me on and won't fire me or anything and let me go. So I borrowed $5 from my cousin. I had $5, but $10 on the down payment on a lot. And Dad, of course, was a carpenter by that time. And I dug the footing, and I think he helped me pour it or something, but it wasn't much of a footing at that time. It wasn't FHA or anything. It just that's so big. And my uncle was this bricklayer. Him and Dad laid a brick or stone, I think it was concrete blocks for the foundation, just 2 blocks high. And anyway, I built this 3-room house with a bath. Did have a bath. And it was a first-class bath, though. Had a WPA. That time we were making them at the lumberyard. It had a concrete floor and riser and stainless steel deal and all that. And a lot better than we had out in the country when I was farming. But the boss, after about, I'd made 4 or 5 payments, I don't know, quite a little while, about 4 or 5 months, I guess. And the owner from Muskogee come over, and he talked to me, and he says, "We can't have that." Said, "You've got to make it modern and get a loan on it, because we got to have our money." So I finagled around. I'd already built a bathroom in this house. The room. And I had to buy some fixtures. Got second-hand fixtures or whatever I could get. And got all built and got a loan on it. $500 some odd. Payment for $10 a month. Which was about what I was paying. So it didn't bother too much on that, but it seemed like it was a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, after I went to work at Tinker, why, I put away a war bond or something like that every month, or every payday, every 2 weeks, I guess it was. And pretty soon I had enough to pay it off. Felt good.
Happy day.
Well, after the war, did you come back to work at the lumberyard?
Yeah. I thought all this service people will be coming back and they'll have priority, and I'll get laid off and I could get this job now and it'd be good. Well, I did, and the manager decided he didn't. In fact, they gave me about what he was getting this time. And he'd been with them all during the war and before. And he didn't much like for me to be getting as much as he was. So he went in business for himself and made it all right. He moved to Tecumseh, put in his own lumber yard. And they made a living for him and his boy, and he was a pretty good trader. He could get things done better than I was. Really, I hadn't had that much experience on that line, but the business wasn't as good as it was previously. It get started pretty good, but it was so much of it on a credit, and took too much money for the owners didn't like it like that. They wanted it more of a money deal, and I couldn't make it like that, so business fell off on my part. There was only 13 lumber yards for a while in Shawnee, which was a little over the market line. Wasn't that much demand. But I worked there till 50, and I want to say 58 or 9, someplace along in there. I still hadn't had much of a raise since I'd been in there, and everything else was going up, but my money, salary. So I told them, I said, I've got to have. They had the lumberyard for sale, but no buyers, no takers, and I said, I went to a lumberyard sale where they auctioned it off. I said, you could do that with this one. So they did. They auctioned it off. And then I went to work for Bison Lumber Company, which is owned by Lake Cowan at that time. And he was building some buildings at Stillwater for the college quite a bit. I worked there for about 8 years, and the manager there decided to go in business for himself. And he went across the road to the railroad property, and they had an old freight building there that he took over, made a lumber yard out of it. And then he went, it burned down, and then he put in another lumber yard on Independence, and it's there yet. White Lumber Company, and it's the only individual lumber yard that I know of at this time.
In Shawnee.
It's they've got a yard at Seminole and one Shawnee, but he died just a month or so ago.
It seemed like the lumber business was pretty competitive down here.
Oh, it was. While I was in it, it was very competitive.
where would they get most of the lumber?
From mostly from the West Coast. We did get some from Arkansas and Louisiana down in there. Depend on how. When I was with Springer, we got all of it from Arkansas and Louisiana and all in there because it could be trucked in. And we were on lumberyard, on railroad property, but we got very little from. We'd get about one car a year, or maybe two, but we would get cement by the carload. And that was always good to unload. That was before fork trucks and dollies and all that. You just picked it up, carried it.
Well, I bet you were in good shape.
Oh yeah.
That's hard work.
I have picked up 3 sacks of Portland. Now, at one time. Now that's quite a bit of weight. I didn't really pick it up. It was on stack and it was just level, but I did hold it in my hands, carry it out to the truck and put it on the truck. Now that's pretty good. Now I can't pick up a gallon of milk.
Did you wear roundhouse overalls?
Big part of the time.
That's a big deal in Shawnee, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
And they made those.
Did you stay in the same house, or did you build a bigger one?
Well, I stayed in the same house until I was made manager. I'd built on a room during the war to take care of the kids. But I was still working a tinker at that time. Then after I got to be manager and all, I felt like we could do better, so I built a house on Market Street that was real good. It's still there today. Well, both of them is, even the little deal, except for the path, it's gone. And it don't look as good as it used to, but it's still there. And one on Market looks just about as good as it did, but it was built in '49, and that was before heating and air came in, so you had to have window deals and all that. So it hasn't done too well. It's a rent place now.
Did church play an important role during all of those years?
Not really. My wife and I didn't see alike on the churches, and we'd go once in a while, and it just, she didn't want to go where I went, and I didn't want to go where she went. And so we didn't either one go, and we did go to dances quite a bit.
We need to talk about that a little bit too, since you love dancing. How did that all get started?
Well, now that started back during the Depression. After I graduated from high school, there wasn't anybody come to the house or nothing, nobody around. And I'd get lonesome. It was, there I had depression.
During the Depression.
During the Depression. But the good Lord was good. there was a big bunch of possum grapes in one of the trees right close to us. And I got all of them that I could get. I put them in a tub and walked on them like they did in the movies. And I made some wine. Then I began to have company.
Muscadine wine.
It made it a lot different for me. And at that time there wasn't much music around, except at the house. I mean, Dad played the mandolin, and our very good friends that lived just north of us they played the violin, guitars, first one thing and another. Had a piano even. So I knew about music, but I didn't know of any dances at that time, but these boys that come by, they knew about play parties. And we'd go to play parties. And that's when you dance just like a square dance kind of, only you had to do the music yourself. You sang like Pretty Little Girl Left Behind Me and all that. And that way we change partners, get another girl, and dance a little. Or I don't know if it was dancing, but it was kind of dancing. And then they began to playing music and having square dances, round dances, and first one thing and another, in the houses, and go from house to house. And we had a little club that we called the Owl Club. And I made cards, membership cards for them. And I made about 50. We had about 50 members. And I got to be a square dance caller. I can't call one down. Can't hardly talk, but
Well, you can probably try a short one for us.
well, I don't know if I could now. But that kind of come to an end like everything does. Is after I went to work at the lumberyard, boy, we didn't get to go as much and all, but we did still go some when we could. Had to hire babysitters and all that. Of course, at that time, babysitters wasn't so high, about 25 cents an hour, so, you know, you weren't gone all that long. And it wasn't too bad.
No, you still dance today?
I still dance today, but not like that. I mean, no square dancing. I have thought a time or two that, well, I'd like to do a square dance just to see if I could, but I haven't tried it yet.
So where do you go dancing today?
Oh, at the Senior Citizen Center, and there's a community center. The senior citizens have it Tuesday and Thursdays from 1 o'clock till 2:30, I believe it is. Maybe just from, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 1 to 2:30. And then the community center has it in the morning from 10 till 11:30. And this lady that I have for my dance partner don't like to drive at night, and I don't either. So a daytime dance is about all we go to.
So do you drive to the dances?
Yeah, I'd drive.
I'll be darned.
And I got the little pickup out there. It's manual. I mean, they no power brakes, no power steering.
And you drive.
And I drive. And Jerry says when I get to where I can't turn the corner, I got to quit. And I'm put through there.
That means you're not going to make it on time to the dance.
Right. I let my driver's license expire here a while back, and have to get a new. You have to have your birth certificate to get a new license. Well, I couldn't find mine. I've been carrying it by billfold, and someplace or other it had slipped out, blew away. So I had to get a new one, and Jerry said, I'm not driving to Oklahoma City to get your license. You'll have to do it by mail. It took 2 weeks. That's a long 2 weeks. It kind of taught him because he had to take me, you know. He didn't take me every time, but he took me part of the time.
You didn't get to dance during those 2 weeks?
That's what I'm talking about. He had to take me to a dance.
Okay.
That he didn't like that.
Well, you're always a parent till the end, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So he had no choice.
Well, on days you don't dance, what do you do? To spend your time, what do you do?
Well, I visit with my dance partner some of the time. And it's been a help to both of us because her husband died about the same time my wife died. And last wife died. And she says it's helped her, and it's helped me too.
How old is your dance partner?
She's 90. Well, we'll be 90 this June 14th.
I'll be darned.
You're not supposed to tell that.
Huh?
You're not supposed to tell that.
Well, it's all right. See, after you get past 90, well,
It doesn't.
it's kind of an honor to be, you know, a little bit more.
And still dancing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And driving. How early do you get up in the morning?
It varies quite a bit. I like to get up around 6:30, something like that. But usually it has to get daylight. Like now, that's like 7:30 or something.
And how late do you stay up?
I go to bed about 9:30.
And do you do much reading during the day?
No, my eyes seem like they get tired real quick, and I read the newspaper, and after I do that, that's about all the reading I do. I'll read my Sunday school lesson, and that's about the extent of it. I used to read a lot. I could read a book in a short time, but now I can't. I can't read a book too long.
Well, did you ever think you'd live to be 100?
Well, yeah, I wanted to, because my uncle was a kind of a politician and a lawyer. I don't know where he went to law school or how he ever went to law school. I don't think he did. But he got by as a lawyer for some way or other in Texas. And he was a genealogist, is that right? He wrote a book, Tennessee Cousins, and it's in a lot of libraries. But it showed that I had a ancestor, be a great uncle, I think, that lived to be 102, and had 4 wives. And see, I just had 2.
So you might make
But
it
anyway, I wanted to live as long as he did, or a little longer, just to be a different, I guess. And so I did get to be 100, so that's pretty good. Now I'm pretty well satisfied. If I don't make it to 102, I'll be all right.
No, let's aim for 103.
Well, I ain't going to commit anything.
I'll come dance with you when you're 103.
What do you attribute your longevity to?
Well,
What's your secret?
there's just don't die. That's the only thing. I haven't lived by any rules or regulations at all. I eat what I want to, drink what I want to, do what I want to pretty well.
Some people say that who are 100, say they have a philosophy of life that they live by. Do you have a philosophy that you live by?
Not that you could call it that, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
It's just well, you take what you get and make the most of it. It's about the only way that you get by.
Yeah.
Have any idea why you're still here? What do you attribute your longevity to?
Good luck. Good Lord. There's just no rhyme or reason. I should have been dead a long time ago by accident. I've been in some places that shouldn't have got out of alive, but I did. And it's a wonder that I am here. And I know all these cousins that I've had, and there's a bunch of them from the 8 in there. They all had 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 8. So there's still quite a few of them left. Mm-hmm. I know at my birthday party, which was good, I'd started it about a year before it was going to happen. And kids hadn't said a word. So I'd made all the arrangements.
You planned your party yourself?
I planned my party. I was going to have one. I didn't have many birthday parties growing up. But I was going to have a birthday party for my 100th. And I'd arranged for the orchestra and the hall, and kind of for some of the deal. But then about 3 months before it, the boy said, we've been talking about your birthday. And I said, I've got it arranged. And he said, are we invited? I said, yeah, you can come. I said, you can bring the cake. So anyway, they took over and they paid for the orchestra and did the cake and did it up good. I had 100 candles on the cake. Blew them all out.
Did you make a wish?
Oh, I don't think I did.
You get them all out in one try?
No, it took 2.
That's pretty good.
I thought it was. I had this fireman with a fireman's hat and all come by and go up with me. He died yesterday or day before yesterday now, I guess it was. Pictures in the paper today. He's a retired fire chief.
Sounds like humor's been a part of your life too, huh?
Yeah, I tried to be a cartoonist one time, and I wasn't very good at it, but I did draw when I lived at Durant. They had a little weekly newspaper, and then they had a big peanut. That was the deal down at City Hall. It was a big peanut. It was supposed to be the biggest in the world or whatever. Wasn't, but it just made. Anyway, I drew a weekly cartoon for this newspaper, and I do it for a year, and that was too much too. I didn't want to do that anymore.
So you lived in Durant too?
I lived there for about 14 years.
How old were you when you moved there?
That was after I retired.
Okay.
My wife, we had moved to Cleveland to a lumber yard after Bison had a little, after the Bison lumber yard manager put in his own yard, they made me manager. And then his sister, the owner's sister, didn't go with the other manager. And so she was the manager, more or less. She wasn't in name, but she could override anything I did. And we just didn't get along too well. And so I decided I'd quit. Well, in fact, it was kind of a mutual agreement that we both would quit. And I went to Benson Lumber Company at Cleveland, Oklahoma, that is, and lived there for 14 years. And then in 80, I moved to Durant and lived there until my second wife died. And I can't remember the date, but it was in the 90s, I think. Well, I got my dates all mixed up now. It's wrong.
So Durant was like a retirement.
Yeah, my wife wanted to move. And I said, we'll move any place you want to, because I didn't have anything there at Cleveland. I did have a boat storage and stuff that I'd built, but I wasn't tied. We didn't have any kinfolks there. Kids didn't like to go up there too far. And I said, we'll just move any place you want to, as long as it's in Oklahoma. And so we looked all around and finally decided to do that because it was close to Texoma, which we
Lake
used
Texoma.
to go to. When we lived here, well, we'd go to Texoma every weekend nearly, if we didn't have a dance or something. to go to.
So it was like a family getaway.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
To fish or ski
yeah,
or
we
what?
fished
Fish.
It's a big lake.
and swam and water
Water ski.
skied and stuff like that. And that was good while it lasted, but then after we moved down there, we didn't go tall. Well, we did once in a while, but we got us a travel trailer and all that, but we'd go to Texas because the daughter was in Texas. And that's not a good place to go to, where they were, because it seemed like they always was a place where it was a lot of mosquitoes and first one thing and another, swamps.
Well, what brought you back to Shawnee then?
My wife died.
And then you moved back.
At that time, I was 90 something. And I just wanted to get closer to him because I could tell that I was going downhill. There wasn't no way that I was going to get better. In fact, we had moved to her house, which I was supposed to move if she died. And by law, I could have stayed there till I died. But I was more acquainted with the boys, her boys at that time, and their families. And I didn't want to put them through a long rigmarole. And the house was in pretty good shape at that time. And I told him, I says, just put it up for sale right now, because I says, another year or two it's going to have a coat of paint and all that inside and out. I says, you can save that expense if you sell it now. And they did. And so this boy built this in 30 days. Or a little over that, I guess, but just about. And it's been
Good.
just about right for what I want. When I'm going, he can tear out this petition and he can put that old truck in here now and work on it. Put it together.
Now, when history is written, what do you want to say about you? What would you like to be remembered?
Gosh, I don't know. I've done so many things that all of them I don't want in history.
Well, how do you want others to remember you by? I mean,
Well, that I did a little good sometimes.
Anything you want to add before we close out?
No, I better close out.
You've been great. Thank you very much.
yeah.